So welcome back to Learn Astrology with Mary. My name is Mary English, and today we are talking to Ana Isabel, who's an astrologer and also a hypnotherapist. Is that the right term?
Yes, a clinical hypnotherapist.
Clinical hypnotherapist. So, and I just want to take you back, if I can, Ana, to how you first got into astrology. What was it that sparked your interest? So go way back in time. How old were you and what was going on?
I was all of 20 and I was at university, and I had always had an interest in stories and folklore. And when I say always, I do mean as far as back as I can remember. And I also had an interest in psychology, so I was studying psychology at the time, amongst other things. And I met my partner, who was into astrology. And suddenly two loves meshed, story and psychology, and the rest, I say, is history.
And what were you studying at uni?
Well, I was doing, I think at this point I was studying psychology along with um, literature, English and French, medieval
Oh,
literature.
blimey. Okay.
Yeah.
And what uni was that at?
University of Toronto.
Toronto. That's in Canada. I'm no good at geography. So,
Yeah.
oh, okay. So, what were you doing living over in Canada then? Just going to uni there?
No, I grew up there.
Oh, okay. Okay. Why didn't I know that? What made me think you were born in the UK?
Don't know. I don't know. I've been here for a very long time.
Yeah. Okay. And so there you are. You're in Toronto. You're at university. You're studying literature and psychology. You meet this chap. But tell me, but how did the astrology happen? Like you mentioned about stories and stuff. But what was it? You saw a chart. You had a reading. What went on?
No, I just started learning. I just started reading and learning, and I thought what was really exciting about it was that it here was something was ancient psychology. And I thought that was amazing, because we always think astrology began, with Jung and Freud. And so here I am, and I'm looking at it, and I'm going, oh my goodness! And I'm studying medieval literature, which many references to many astrological references, because it's a time in which astrology is very much alive and vibrant. And so you're reading Chaucer and you're looking at references to astrology that are coming up, and now they're making sense to you because you know about the zodiac, and you know how things are. So it was just really exciting to be discovering this, and to be discovering that here was an art, or at risk of being burned at the stake by scientists, a science which married everything that I thought was fascinating about life. It's about people, and it's about story that explains human nature. It's everything that interested me in psychology. I was never into the mechanics of psychology. I was into the Jungian approach to psychology, and Freudian approach to psychology, which is about symbolism and understanding how the subconscious works. So it made complete sense to me. I wasn't in statistics and cutting up mice brains and etc.
Okay, but what did you do? Did you see a book? I mean, how did you even know that astrology existed? So, I mean, in the studying that you're doing, it was there and it's made sense. But did you find a book? How did you even know that astrology existed? You know, my mother was 90 when she died, and she just had never heard of astrology.
I can't imagine that. I think my earliest astrological reference was my grandmother, who kept referring to me as a stubborn Taurus. And so this is somebody with no true understanding of astrology, but we're looking at generations who pick up, we're looking at the residue of the knowledge of astrology that permeates through different generations, and what's left of it is the zodiac and the archetypes of the signs.
Mm.
And so, and then of course there are, and of course then looking into that, I think I must have been about 11 or 12 when I started looking things up.
Mm-hmm.
Also seeing horoscopes on TV. At the time we had a, I think it was a Portuguese channel, because my family is Portuguese, and I think it was at the end of the news they did the horoscope, which I never really paid much attention to, but it did mean that I knew all the 12 signs and their symbols.
Right.
And I remember looking them up in the encyclopedia to understand little bit more about what they represented, and then forgot all about it, except for the fact that whenever I studied Greek mythology,
Mm-hmm.
it fascinated me. And then when I later stumble into astrology again, properly this time,
Mm-hmm.
then all of those myths are already there in my mind. So it's just basically an explanation of what the myths are about. Um,
Cool.
so yeah,
And so you said you started learning it. So how did you do that? Did you get a book? Did you go to a class? How did it
the
work?
book I ever had, I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember the title of it, but it was given to me as a birthday present. It might be the very first birthday present my partner ever bought me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a beautifully illustrated introduction to astrology with medieval plates, printed and to illustrate. And I just I thought it was fascinating. So after that, then it was lots of library books, and away we go.
And did you use the library at the uni, or did you have to go to like a city-based one?
I didn't use the university library for that. I did go to the local library to get books out. Yeah.
Astrology books. Wow, I think my local library's got about four, and two of them are mine.
Yeah. Now let me just think, because I think I may only have found one or two there, because the next thing was I wanted to know more about moon signs, and I stumbled across Sasha Fenton's moon signs.
Oh yeah, okay. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so then I learned about the moon signs, because I wanted to know what my moon was. And so it went on slowly from there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she also had one for rising signs. And then it was a case of getting a manual to learn how to actually draw a chart so I could discover what my rising sign was. And funnily enough, it was last week that I was clearing out my study, and I came across the folder that had the first astrology charts that I drew for me and my family.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
So you drew that by hand. So what
Oh,
we now? What sort of year would this have been ish?
uh, 89, 90.
Okay, so we're pre-computers because computers didn't happen till the 90s. Yeah.
Yeah, we're pre-digital.
Uh-huh. And then your partner at the time was also into astrology as well. So was he studying the same subjects as you?
He
Sorry, I missed that. He was
he
what?
was he wasn't at university.
Oh, right. Hmm. But he knew all about astrology.
He did. He had a real interest, and then we started learning together.
Oh, that's nice. What sign of the zodiac is he?
He's a Capricorn.
Okay, and you're a Taurus, yes? So
Yeah.
you're both Earth. And then what is your moon sign then? So you learnt all about it in that first book. What is your moon sign?
Capricorn.
Oh, okay. Nice mix then. Hey.
Hey, yeah, yeah. It's like a jigsaw.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so your first experiences of astrology, you're at uni, you're learning all about the subjects that you're doing, which is literature and psychology, and then you're doing this extra studies yourself on the side to do astrology. So how long did it take you before you actually managed to make a chart and get the confidence to do that, would you say?
Now, I had to finish university for that. So that would have been around 91. So I reckon maybe a couple of years.
Hmm. And then you did this chart for your family. Which, can you remember which member of the family it was you did the chart for?
I did all of them.
Oh wow.
Did
Okay.
all of them. Oh yeah, no, you know, I remember doing charts for, because I had a really good memory for birth dates as well.
Mhm.
I would, so I wanted to know who my friends had, that I'd known that I wasn't even seeing anymore, where their moons were, and so yeah, no, that was my learning, was by just everybody I ever remembered a birth date for, which fortunately was a good long, quite a lot, a long list. Yeah, so I then finished all of, I started doing all of that, and that really made me think about, the signs in action. So
Mm.
it wasn't, and if, to this day, when I'm teaching astrology, I encourage my students to go and do it, because you cannot just learn by reading it. You have to go and do it, and people are so afraid of making a mistake. If you don't, do it, you're never going to learn it, because
Absolutely.
it's by actually practicing it, um, that you're going to do it. You're going to learn it.
Yes, there is an impatience I have found though that people that are learning astrology sort of want to learn it all rather quickly.
Yeah, I know. I remember that feeling, and I still have that feeling whenever I learn anything new. Whenever I'm, exposed to anything new, I want to learn it all at once. But what that does for me is it spurs me on to do loads of it and
Mm,
to get better at it.
mm,
And actually, I find astrology quite forgiving.
mhm,
There are checks and balances within the chart, which mean you're not going to go too far wrong.
mm.
And in fact, if you are wrong, you're wrong in your interpretation. It's not the chart that's wrong. So go back and reinterpret. Think, what else could this mean? What are the options? So, if I'm looking at a sun moon square, and my suspicion is that the parents aren't together, but that it's very clear that they are together. What is the other option for that interpretation? And think again, and then you'll find that actually they may be together, but they're not together.
Mm.
It's very, very common. So you have to just allow yourself to rethink and understand that it's the theme. As long as you've got the theme, you're going to get there.
Mhm. Okay, so you did the charts for all of your family. Was that an eye opener?
I don't know that it was an eye opener. I would describe it as doing a jigsaw puzzle, because suddenly everything made sense,
Ah,
and you could see how things fitted and didn't fit, and the dynamics and why it was that some people, um, let's just say, rubbed each other up the wrong way and so on.
mm.
So it wasn't that it was an eye opener, because it didn't tell me anything I didn't know about the family itself. But what it did do was go, oh, that's why. That's why.
It it is lovely actually doing your family and finding out, as you say, the dynamics. I've done it with mine. We've got rather an enormous family anyway, and you know, why did each one of us every now and again sort of fall out with each other for whatever reasons, which is what you get in a big family. But finding your place within the family is important as well. You know, so if you find out about moons and saturns and sun signs and placements, and then there'll be the family theme. I mean, we'll be going on to Erin Sullivan here and talking about family
Yes.
dynamics, but it is useful. It's so useful to find your place in the world. You know, why have you incarnated into this particular family? What's it all about? And astrology will definitely give you those answers to it. And so, did your boyfriend, sorry, your partner, did he carry on with the astrology?
Oh yes. Oh
Mm.
yeah.
And does he practice?
um, he's Yes, he does, in the sense that he'll do charts for people when they ask him to, but it's not his profession in the way that it has become mine.
Mhm.
But he absolutely does, and he's really great at it as well. He's really good at it.
Cool. And so how did that morph then from you doing the charts for your family and finding your place and the fit and stuff to then you becoming a professional astrologer? What was the gap in between? Because the people that are listening to the podcast are just starting. They're just starting their astrology journey and they love to be able to hear about how did somebody get from learning it to being it. So talk me through it.
So that goes back to what you were saying about when did I actually start doing it for people other than friends and family, which, as I said, was about 2 years into it. And what I did at the time was so friends of friends who were interested, I would volunteer to do charts for them. And at the time, what I was doing written charts, something that I have never done since because I discovered that it's incredibly hard work.
Tell me about it.
Takes far too long, and here's the really bad bit, is grossly open to misinterpretation. So so you don't want to do that. So anyway, I got distracted from that anyway because I then started working. I've always had, I've never had one job. I've always had more than one job. So university, I was studying, learning astrology and working to pay for university. Then it moved on. So I start work, but I'm working as a teacher and I'm working as a storyteller. And then that moves to working as a teacher, a storyteller, and a radio presenter. Radio presenter, actually producer, presenter, and writer. So I had all three as part of my job description. So yes, so I was busy. And so astrology very much took a back seat at that point in terms of me even thinking about doing it for anybody else. But what I did always do was I always had the charts of my children that I was teaching. I had the register, didn't I? I didn't have time for birth, but I had enough to help me to understand children quite quickly. And it led to me developing a reputation, I think, for being able to deal with difficult children, which then led to me working as a special needs teacher. And I found that although working as a special needs teacher, you're working with some learning difficulties, most of the children that I was working with did not have learning difficulties as such. They had emotional issues that were getting in the way of their learning. And I think having that astrological knowledge helped me tap into what was going on quite quickly and perhaps bring things out. And I have to say that teaching for me was about the relationships that I developed with the children more than anything else. And it did, there were quite a lot of teachers who would talk about their children with me to see how we could, get to the bottom of what was going on. And, there were times when I would be called in to talk to a child and to see what we could do for them. I did on a few occasions, not to mention the fact that I was the one who could alert the school as to when we were about to have a full moon and which children might just be going a bit loopy.
Yeah.
Because I knew because working as a special needs teacher, I knew most of the children in the school. And because I also used to take classes, for teachers if they were having non-contact time. And so I knew most of the children in the school quite well, and I could forewarn. And it was a running joke that I predicted which children would need extra help on months at a full moon.
Oh my goodness, that's really interesting because I was speaking to Roy Gillett. We interviewed him a few
Oh,
weeks ago, and he was a teacher too. And he said that there was a particular boy that was just completely out of hand. And then he found out this is a boarding school he's working at, and he's I don't know what you call it, a pastor or something, you know, looking after
oh
the
yes,
kids' welfare. Yeah, and the child was a cancer. And what nobody understood was he was extremely sensitive, and because he was so sensitive, he'd have these meltdowns. And then when he found out what sign the zodiac was and checked his chart and stuff, and he knew astrology then, but he wasn't practicing it. That made all the difference. And in the
yep,
end, he decided to leave teaching because he found that you know he's part of the system and it was just squeezed out like a toothpaste thing.
exactly.
But you know
Yeah,
he wanted the individuality. Yeah. But I thought that was really interesting that you had the same experience
yeah.
that
I
your astrology allowed that knowledge.
I would say that my teaching experience was my astrological and my therapy practice.
Mm.
That is where, I didn't know that that's what I was training to do when I was a teacher, but that is what I was training to do, because through it all, it also taught me about how we develop as human beings, and it and what it is that we need in order to develop. And it helped me to understand developmental phases and all that stuff that translates into the houses and the aspects. And so it was a while, between me starting astrology, my astrological journey, if I can call it that, and actually beginning to become an astrologer. And I actually also believe, um, very strongly, that it was the right thing to do, because at 21, 22, I had no life experience.
Mm.
And so everything was theoretical. Put me in a classroom in the middle of East London, and all of life is there in front of me. You know, parents literally fighting, and mothers fighting in playgrounds, the whole thing. All of that is there. It was like a fast track to learning about life. And at the time, I did not enjoy it, but I am extremely grateful, um, for the experience it gave me, and for the lessons that it provided for me, the opportunities for learning that I gained. And I would not, I would not be the astrologer that I am, or the therapist that I am, had I not spent a decade teaching.
Mm. So it gave you that good ground to say to find out about people. I mean, that is a point, though. I have noticed that when people start to become astrologers at a very young age, they've got no idea what it's like to be divorced, get pregnant, lose a child, any of those things. Not to say everybody needs to have those things happen,
No,
but none of their peer group or less of their peer group would have those things. Or be able to experience them. So it does. I'm not saying it's impossible to be an astrologer at that age because you certainly can be. However, the life experience thing does add to the
well,
toolbox.
what it does is when I first got my puppy, I did tons of reading about dogs and training. And so I felt really ready when he arrived. But then he arrived.
Yeah.
And oh my God, every time, every puppy lesson that we had at puppy school, I was always the one at the end talking to my teacher, full of questions, full of concerns. So there's theory, and then there's reality.
Yeah.
and and that's the thing, is that when you are reading about things, the more life experience you have, the more you understand at a deeper level what that's about. If I think about, even when I started, after I stopped teaching and decided to become an astrologer professionally,
Mhm.
even then, the gap between then and now is
Mhm.
massive, because time and experience have stepped in. you know, the therapist I am today and the therapist I was when I began are, you know, it's just so different. I had a long gap in teaching astrology because I taught astrology for quite a long time, and then I stopped because I got very busy and I just didn't have time. But
Mm.
I'm now doing it again, and I can feel the depth of understanding has just it's I can't compare to when I first began.
Mhm.
It's such a so experience plays a part, and the older you are, the more experience you have, the better you're going to be. You know, you talk about a Chiron transit, sorry, you talk about a Chiron return. It's theory until you've got one.
Mm.
Now, you might be able to speak from experience because, you know, you've seen your mother go through it, you've seen your father go through it, but you cannot know what it feels like until you've had it. You know, your Saturn return, what's it all about? When you're
Mm.
23, you have no idea what a Saturn return's about. All you've got is what the textbooks say. If you are lucky enough to have friends who are older than you, then you might witness what it's like for somebody going through a Saturn return. When you go through it, you remember it. You know, you remember it. So always time plays a part. And the beauty of something like astrology and of course the therapy work that I'm involved with also is that it just gets better and better, and you're always learning. There's always something to learn. So I would say for anyone who's starting out in astrology, be patient. This is a lifelong process of deepening understanding, and it's really not about gathering more and more information in terms of, unless you have a specific interest in bringing in asteroids and other things, which is great, that's lovely, but it's the core. The core is the core, and it's about getting a deeper and deeper understanding of the meaning of that core. That's what's going to make you a brilliant astrologer. The rest is the icing on the cake. But this is the stuff that it's made of. And it's your life that's going to make you better and better. So be patient. This is you know, it's a bit like a fine wine that needs to mature, or a cheese that needs to mature for it to become more and more brilliant. Except it doesn't have a sell-by date, and it's never going to be corked or anything like that. It just does get better and better.
Spoken like a true Taurus.
Yeah.
And so you made the decision to become an astrologer. So what prompted that to become a professional astrologer? So you're doing the teaching.
Yeah, well, interestingly, at the time, I was teaching part-time and working for the BBC World Service part-time. And Uranian transit did the job. And what it was that there were two government decisions which affected both of my careers at the same time. So the first one was that the government decided, in its infinite wisdom, that it was going to raise teachers' salaries without funding it. So it meant that all non-class teachers, most of us lost our jobs.
Right.
So if you were a class teacher, you kept your job.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, in some schools, it was so bad that some teachers lost their jobs and head teachers became class teachers.
When was that?
This was it was during Tony Blair's wonderful period, somewhere in the early noughties.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Was it early noughties? Around 2004, 2005. I can be specific.
Mm-hmm.
2004, in fact, I would say.
And where was Uranus in your chart at that point then?
I'm just trying to remember. I think it may have been what sign it was in, but
Hold on.
I think it may have been squaring something in my Gemini, but I'm not sure. Let's just think.
Right, so 2004, Uranus was in the sign of Pisces.
I was just going to say, I think it was in Pisces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because it would have had to have been in order for it to squared my MC.
And your MC's in?
Gemini.
Right.
Yeah. So it was either square my MC or Mars in Gemini. It was one or the other. I can't now remember very readily, but it was one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been Mercury in Gemini, but I think it was one of the first.
Mm-hmm.
So that happened, and yes, so it was quite a strange time for a lot of schools, where suddenly, I mean, the first things were deputy heads going back into the classroom, having to be deputy heads. But in some schools, it was so bad that head teachers actually went in as well, until the funding got sorted out. I think things got better later after this calamity, but a lot of it.
Does this mean that class teachers didn't have contracts? Is that how they managed to sack them all? What you on a 0 hours contract or something?
No, I think a lot of us were just given notice at this point. So because the schools just couldn't hold us. So yeah.
And how did that feel then, to lose both your jobs?
Well, the teaching I was delighted about. I was very much ready to say goodbye to that. The World Service came about from another policy. So what happened was I was working for a department called BBC English, which specialized in programming in English to teach English to other parts of the world. And so I was not making programs that taught English, but I was making programs that were about the English language. So they were great programs, there was one series where, in that series, I made programs about slang, Shakespearean verse, it could be anything. There was another one called Word on the Street, which was exactly about slang. There was another series I did, which was Talking Peace. That was a lovely one also, about the use of language in the military. So these were for people who already spoke English, but wanted more about the English language. And the funding was cut for our department.
So if your funding's cut for your department, that's it, you're unemployed, yeah?
Not necessarily, but I was freelance.
Oh, okay.
So although I was working for that department, I was freelance, and I guess I had a choice at that point to look for another teaching job. I had a choice to either look for another teaching job, which was never going to happen because I really did not want to do this anymore, or to start looking for work as a producer in other BBC departments. But the BBC is an odd leviathan. Despite being called auntie, she's more of a leviathan than an auntie. And it's hard to move around unless you know people. And I was freelance. Now, I could have just continued to submit because I had enough of a track record to be submitting programs for commissioning, which I could have done for Radio 4. And I think I did start to put some together, but I think working 17-hour days occasionally had somewhat taken the shine off the joy of program making. And I decided that no, I didn't think that the BBC was the place for me. And I certainly didn't think education was the place for me. And that's when I thought, right, I think I'll become an astrologer.
Was that a critical thing for you at the time? Was it an easy decision to make?
feel that it was there I had much of a choice. I didn't want to continue doing what I had been doing before. I loved producing and making radio programs. I just loved that. I hated working for bullying editors and working in a system which was pretty inhumane. And that's also why I wanted to leave education. I loved the children. And I loved working with children. I absolutely hated with a passion working in schools. Ultimately, I think I am happiest working for myself.
I couldn't go back to work for someone ever again. I tried it a few years back. There's a hotel next to us and they were looking for some staff, and I thought, well, I've got some spare hours, I'll go in there and help out. I helped out for 2 hours and walked home because I can't do it.
Yeah.
I think I'm absolutely unemployable now. I don't think I could be employed. And it's just too, yeah, I absolutely love self-employment. Apart from the fact that nobody's telling you what to do. But the other side to it is that you can tell yourself what to do, you know. Okay, and so how did you set yourself up? So this is the early 2000s. So did you make a website? How did it get started?
I did. So this is now this is now 2005. So I was very systematic about it. I did create a website. I think it was fairly early on, but I did create a website. And I did two things. I decided that the best way to attract clients was to give talks. And so I started targeting spa hotels who often have speakers come in to entertain their clientele. And so I did that. And I went to, I think once a month, every Friday night, on Friday nights, about once a month. And off I went and gave my talks. My little talks were, about the 12 signs of the zodiac. And I attracted quite a lot of clients through that, as well as then other things. It wasn't just that one. There were others. I attempted libraries, doing it for libraries, but libraries were not a great success. The thing that I did, which I think was the most significant, was that because I was used to working in radio, I made a list of all the BBC local radio stations that I could get to. And so I started to find who would have me go in and take calls from listeners. And I tell you, nothing makes you a better astrologer than that.
Absolutely, so I've done it.
You've got
2 minutes,
a minute sometimes to answer a question, and you've got to get to the point. And whereas before, without notes, and before, it was like riding a little tricycle. You've got your training wheels on because you've got your notes there. Oh no, there's no chance. You've got 1 minute. What do you know? Tell me now. So that was really good. In fact, the very first station that took me on was LBC, in the days when they had good programming instead of just all-round news. The middle of the night, it was 2:00 in the morning. The wonderful Peter Dealey, and so off I went at 2:00 in the morning, once a week. I think it was Wednesday night.
And well, actually, to the studio, you went. They had the studio open. That. Oh, wow. Okay, for guests. Wow.
Yeah, it was the all-night show, and off I went at 2:00 in the morning, and then another regular was BBC Kent. So on a Saturday, once a month, off I went there, and Radio Jersey, funnily enough, approached me. I can't remember now how they found me, but they certainly found me. I don't think I found them. And but there was a point. There was 1 year in which I could say I had been pretty much all over the South in all BBC local radio stations, because I also decided to do psychic fairs. And so the other thing I did was I had these amazing display boards,
Mhm.
and I put all the different signs of the zodiac, information about the moon, and off I went to psychic fairs and talked to people. People would come, and also I would take all my tools for chart drawing, and I gave readings. I would draw the chart on the spot with the person. I know I can't believe I used to do that, but I
How
did.
did you do that? How did you calculate it? What were you using? Did you have a computer?
Oh, had no computer, because I didn't have access to power at that point. So and you didn't have 3G.
No.
So, or mobile phones, we didn't have smartphones then. No, I used to take my ephemeris and my book of tables and calculate, and also my book of time zones, and when time zones changed, because say like Portugal, forever changing from GMT to European, and so what year did change. So I had all of that kit with me, and I would have blank charts which I would then draw.
Mm.
So yes.
Oh, you're a genius. I still haven't managed to. I'm still nervous about actually physically making the
Oh,
chart using cameras. Haven't done it
you
yet.
get to it. You get used to it, and I wasn't doing equal house. Equal house would have been a cinch compared to what
Mm,
I was in Placidus.
mm,
And but no, off I went with my display boards and my chart drawing kit. And so more learning experience, more
mm.
learning experience. I loved it. I loved every minute of doing psychic fairs. I really had such fun, and discovered that this was the brilliant thing, to have a Virgo ascendant. And
Right.
you know that means I'm shy, right?
Yeah.
In terms of meeting strangers. And here I discovered that I actually could talk to strangers, because I had a kind of uniform on, which gave me permission to talk to strangers. They wanted to talk to me. So after a while of doing that, I got involved with the College of Psychic Studies, because I now had a track record that made me interesting.
Mhm.
I started doing workshops for them, and then I started teaching myself, and so I started doing lots more stuff with spiritual centers and so on, and yes, and got involved with the Astrology Lodge of London as well. So this was, I would say, in the first 5 years, all of this was happening.
And were you living in London at that point?
I've been living on the outskirts of London,
Mhm.
almost
Greater London.
Greater London. Yeah. So yes, so that's how it all started to build.
Because you can't talk astrology on radio anymore. It's BBC only every now and again, really, really rarely. I mean, I used to be on BBC Radio Bristol, BBC Radio Somerset, Bath, but they used to have a studio in Bath, which I'd use regularly, do stuff, and then, yeah, it just all stopped when they changed some sort of code of something or other they were doing, and it mentions about
It came
hypnotherapy, and it's
in,
like,
yeah, it came in whilst Uranus and Neptune was in Aquarius, and it was the dawn of scientism, as I and many people call it, which is the new religion, which means that if you do not believe that a certain way of doing science is the only way of living in this world, you are therefore um, off your rocker, or a charlatan,
mm,
and a fraudster. So this is when they introduced the legal requirement that all psychics and astrologers be insured. And at that point, the BBC changed the producer guidelines
yeah,
to say that you could only have things on which were scientifically based.
Yes, astrology came under amusement and
And remembered,
entertainment.
and remembered that to this day, you are legally required to inform your clients and anybody you're giving talk to or a workshop that this is for entertainment purposes only. And my question remains to this day, what happened to freedom of belief and freedom of speech? And in fact, if anything, things have got worse and worse and worse. So yes, absolutely. We have well, never mind.
It doesn't affect the actual business side of it. People still want readings, you know.
Precisely.
They don't. Nobody actually reads what the law is. I mean, I did get under the Vacancy Act of 18 something or other. I did get stopped once, and somebody quoted that act at me, but I won't go into that because this is. Pardon?
That's to do with witchcraft.
To do with fortune telling,
yes,
which astrology isn't.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And it comes under witchcraft, which I think was repealed. So yes, interesting.
The Vacancy Act is still used for people that are homeless. The Vacancy Act still exists, and astrologers could, theoretically speaking, be prosecuted. I think it was Alan Leo. Is that his first? Yeah, he got prosecuted twice under it. The first time, I think they let him off. The second time, they didn't. But that act does still exist, but they don't use it that much at the moment. They're using it mostly for homeless people. Well, they them on.
Yes, astrology does not fit in that category, and it was the witchcraft one that was the one but that has been repealed. Yeah.
And so there you are. You're enjoying the psychic fairs. You're doing quite a lot. You know, you're doing radio and stuff. So how did you? Because you had your own radio station at one point.
I did. Now, I can't even remember how that happened. I think because Adam Fronteras, who started My Spirit Radio, was connected with the Astrology Lodge. I think he phoned me and said, would I like to do a radio show? And of course, me being a radio person, automatically went, of course. And here's the thing I would say to anyone starting off on a new career is never say no. Say yes, worry about how later. Okay, worry about how later. You know, this is you're always on the job training. So just say yes, go for it. So yes, Adam approached me and I said yes, of course. And then I submitted a proposal for the format for the program. He liked it, and off we went.
And that was an internet-based radio station, wasn't it? Yeah. So have you got a studio at home then? So how did that work? I mean, you didn't have a smartphone then, I presume.
No, I used to do my interviews on Skype. I would record them, I would edit them, and then send them off. And you could do that online. So, yeah. So
you could actually email the whole audio?
Yeah, well, you'd use, what did I used to use? I used to use mailbigfile.com.
Oh, okay. So the things back then, it's just because that you used to not be able to share anything if it was too big. You know, they got Dropbox and whatever now, and WeTransfer.
Yeah, we did, and we did. We had a lot of that available, and I loved doing Lightways. That was the program, because it gave me the opportunity to talk to wonderful astrologers, and learn more, you know, and read more, and so yes, it was a tremendous joy to do. That's, I think, you know, if you're learning astrology, everything you do is an opportunity to learn. You know, find out all of your colleagues' birth dates. Play around, learn, practice, do tons of reading.
Mm.
Tons of reading, and then think about everybody you've ever known who has that aspect in their chart. Remember charts. That's the thing. I would more easily remember a chart than somebody's name.
Oh God, I do that as well. It's dreadful.
And it's it it's not at all antisocial. It seems antisocial, but a
Mm,
name has no meaning.
mm,
A chart is a person.
mm.
So of course I'm going to remember the chart because I'm remembering you. Your name could be anything,
Yeah.
but you can't be anything. You are you, and I will remember your chart.
Mm,
It's and funnily enough, that came home to me about a month or two ago when I started teaching again, and I started giving talks online, and I was doing one on the moon, and people I hadn't seen for years wanted to take part in the workshop that followed on.
mhm.
I remembered all of their moon signs, and I couldn't believe that I remembered all of their moon signs. Some of them for over 10 years,
Right. Mhm.
but I remembered their moon signs.
But it's
That,
funny. I've done that. I've said to people, "Oh, you're Sagittarius," and they go, because I can't remember their name, and I go, "You're a Sagittarius, aren't you?" And they go, "How do you remember that?" And it's like, well, I and they'd be really impressed by that. But I can't remember their name, but I'll remember their sign because that's the person,
it
as you
is.
say. Yeah.
You're
Um,
remembering the person. I
mm,
had that at one of the psychic fairs in Cornwall. It was quite funny because I think I must have gone back a few months later to do it again, to do another one, or something, because or I bumped into this man at another psychic fair, and I looked at him and I thought, Leo, what is his name? What's his name? And and I was talking to him, and and I remembered everything about the story, but I had to listen for somebody else to call him the name to remember it. But I knew the chart because I
mm.
when I'd last seen him, and I thought, yeah, here we go. Remember the chart, not the person's name. Could be a bit embarrassing.
But I think most people are quite flattered that you have remember what sign they are. Because
Yeah,
oh, how do you remember that? And my husband and my son are always sort of taking the mickey out of it. You won't remember your name, you should remember what sign of the zodiac you are. It's like
yeah, yeah, absolutely, of course.
because there's all the background info that comes with it as well. You know,
Yeah,
in remembering their sign, then you remember what has happened to them, and you can ask
exactly,
them about how things are for sure.
exactly. Yeah.
And so, if you, I presume you wouldn't want to redo anything or live anything differently. You're happy with how your life has turned out.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Mhm.
This has been, in terms of my career, it's not linear as in it's always, progressing upwards. It's not like that. You have your slumps. You really do have your slumps. But um but it's the most exciting journey I could have imagined. When you're in high school and you're thinking about what you're going to do with your life, I never knew it was going to be this good. And university. I remember once my grandmother saying to me, "So, what happens after you finish?" And I thought, I don't really care. I'm enjoying this right now. And then I thought, but what am I going to do when I finish? And I really didn't know. I think what I thought at the time was I wanted to work in the media. That was what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
I did that, loved program making, but didn't love the environment, shall
Mm.
we say. Whereas this is different. This is creative. It's intimate because you are connecting with people at a very intimate level, and I do feel that I'm nurturing people's souls in that time when they're with me. And I do feel that helping them to open doors. And I feel very humble to be able to do that. And I feel tremendous joy in being able to do it. And I feel excited when I learn something, or when I see something in action. And you can't ask for better than that. You just can't.
Thank you. Anna, how can we get hold of you?
So I guess the easiest thing to remember would be my website, which is lifeastrologer.com.
Mhm.
And there you'll find phone number, email address. So that's lifeastrologer.com.
Super. I will put underneath on the podcast as well. I'll put links how to get to you and
Well,
stuff.
that's
Yeah.
easy
Yeah.
for people to find me. And yeah, it's been so nice to actually be able to talk about this, funnily enough.
Well, it's been lovely speaking to you. It's really, really great. And thank you very much for agreeing to be interviewed today. I'm going to stop the recording and then we'll say goodbye. But we've been speaking to Ana Isabel today. You can get hold of her at lifeastrologer.com. And do tune in next week. Thank you. Bye-bye now.